Welcome everyone to our 20 by 20 event on innovation generation, shaping a new world agenda. I'm David Castle. I am the director of the Innogen Institute. We are focused on innovation generation, so how life science innovation happens both within the Open University in Milton Keynes in the south in England, and here in Scotland at the University of Edinburgh. So this is a 20 by 20 event. I learned about what these things were about a month ago. What it involves is a narration by a number of my colleagues over a set of slides. There's supposed to be no text on the slides, provocative images to get you to think about the way in which life science innovation can make a difference in the future. And so we will have about 6 minutes, I believe, and 20 seconds per presenter, and we will therefore have a series of these 3 slide presentations interspersed with a little bit of pre-prepared video material that we've developed over the past year or two. So that's for my introduction. I'll turn you over now to Professor Dave Wield, who is the former director of the Innogen Center.
Thank you very much. They said we're supposed to be like Ant and Dec, but I've never actually, since I don't know who Ant and Dec are, all I know is, I think, is that they're supposed to sing.
No.
The event is one of 170 this week for the Festival of Social Science. That's 20 a day. It's a UK festival. It's been run by the ESRC, the Economic and Social Research Council, for 10 years or so. It's incredibly popular. The idea is to present good social science, excellent social science they call it, or maybe world-leading social science. Boring words like that, but in an exciting and interesting way. So instead of lecturing, we're getting these 6-minute short pieces. And the idea is to have some debate and interaction afterwards, after the 45 minutes or so from these speakers. The Innogen Center has developed over time some video which gives a little idea of what we do. So we're beginning with a 5-minute video just to give you a kind of flavor of the things that Innogen do. And then we'll introduce the people who are going to speak. Thank you.
Roll the video.
Innogen pioneers approaches that connect people, policy and practice to innovative solutions for real-world problems. We research in areas like emerging technologies, such as cell therapies and synthetic biology. We research innovation systems, private ones certainly, but also public, and most important, public-private partnerships. And we research food and energy systems like biofuels.
We want to know how we develop drugs for neglected diseases and new crops that can feed more people. We want to know if these new technologies deliver what they promise, and if so, if they can be delivered faster, cheaper, and more safely.
Innogen's unique interdisciplinary approach brings together an understanding of how innovative value chains are developed and smarter, more adaptive regulatory processes are shaped, along with more effective engagement of the stakeholders that are affected by the new technologies.
The bioeconomy is about delivering economic growth, but it's also about delivering on some of the social benefits like better health, prosperity, and the environment and food security.
Life science innovation depends on new ideas and discoveries, but the science and technology alone are not enough. Regulation, intellectual property, public perception are among the factors that can radically alter which products and services make it to market. At Innogen, we understand that innovation is a scientific as well as a social phenomenon. We analyze the scientific determinants of innovation success so that the benefits of innovation can reach society in a timely manner.
Emerging technologies are largely based on promises about an unknown future. The nature of the technology is often contested, and the outcomes of the technology are often uncertain. This leads to questions about how to govern the future. With emerging technologies, there's a danger they could be prematurely pushed down certain paths. For example, towards industrialization and commercialization, and away from research for the public good. Governing the future is an area that Innogen is well placed to address.
Innogen's work has shown us how complex innovation systems can become. So we take an evolutionary perspective. We look at how the history, context, knowledge and resource base of an individual region or sector can affect the system's development.
Innovation and regulation go hand in hand. Innogen works really hard to understand the relationship between the two so that the safety is maintained and technological advances can save and improve the lives. When it comes to the good regulation, it's not a question of more or less, it's a question of appropriate and smart. Appropriate regulation is shaped by the clear social objectives designed to meet local needs. When this happens, you have more opportunity for success.
At the turn of the last century, technological innovations in the agrochemical, biotechnology and seed industries were seen to have potential to address productivity, nutrition, storage, and other constraints relating to food security the world over. Interactions and gaps in the policy, regulatory and market environments, however, discouraged or delayed progress. By working across sectors and advocating a multi-layered approach, Innogen helps countries explore options to successfully harness and govern these technologies.
What's really exciting about Innogen is the way that it's brought together the life sciences with the social sciences. And it's done that in a way that's not just academic, but it's real in terms of developing policy and delivering practice. This is so important in the global economy, and Innogen is at the leading edge of delivering on that effective growth.
Success helps economies grow and improve, and people lead better lives.
All right, so you've seen our little promotional video there, and have learned a little bit more about what Innogen as an institute does and what we've been up to for the past 10 or 12 years. It's now my pleasure to invite forward one of the stars of the video, Michele Mastroeni, who's a research fellow in Innogen North here in Edinburgh.
Innogen's work has shown us how complex innovation systems can become. So we take an evolutionary perspective. We look at how the history, context, knowledge and resource base of an individual region or sector can affect the system's development. What's the benefit of this approach? It lets us break down system development to discrete consecutive events so that we can better understand the innovation process, open up the black box, and better understand how policy can target system needs and improve the innovation process.
Hello everyone. Over the next few minutes I want to talk to you about how building a functioning, efficient, and globally connected bioeconomy can help us as a global society overcome a lot of the challenges that we're facing and will be facing for the foreseeable future. But before I do that, I want to talk to you a little bit about innovation, which is basically the introduction of new products, technologies, and ideas, ways of doing things into society. And it's this innovation that will be essential for bringing some of those solutions forward. Now, I've been interested in innovation because I grew up with Star Wars, and while everybody, and particularly Empire Strikes Back, and while everybody was fascinated by the fact that Darth Vader was Luke's father, I was more fascinated by the fact that he could cut off someone's hand and somebody could reattach a new hand that was as good as, if not better than, the original. And what used to be science fiction is now actually coming into the market. So think about it. If we can figure out the technological puzzles, we can not only heal ourselves, but we can make ourselves stronger, faster, and healthier. Now, of course, society's problems are not simply related to health and the biomedical solutions related to them, but we also are facing challenges in terms of the environment, in terms of energy production, food security, and sustainable living. But I think the bioeconomy can go a long way to helping us find solutions to these. For example, in terms of energy, it can help us access new sources of energy, such as biofuels, or it can help us take the waste from particular areas of society and turn those into new sources of bioenergy. It can also help us take the waste from particular areas of society and industries and turn them into inputs into other industries, thereby closing a loop and making us more sustainable. In terms of food production, it can provide us with a suite of different crop solutions, of different planting methods, of ways of accessing the market that can help us increase the food security in order to feed our growing population. And finally, it can help us to continue to monitor our own individual health, but also our collective society's health. These solutions, however, are not going to be easy, and they're definitely not going to be simple. And in other words, I think what we can say is that there will be challenges to society's challenges. Some of the solutions and technologies will potentially fall off a cliff into disuse if we don't address these challenges. And so, for example, if you take biofuels, some biofuels are already on the market. They're already in use to some extent, but we are facing the problem that of accessing feedstocks, in other words, the material necessary to create the biofuels. How do we access the grains, the corn, the palm oils necessary to create biofuels without taking away the food that we eat or further stressing the land that we cultivate? Do we have to find another solution? Do we have to find other sources of feedstocks for biofuels? In terms of food security, we see that some of these solutions that are coming forward, such as genetically modified crops, are facing increased resistance from different lobby groups. We're also seeing that we still have to crack the puzzle of how best to combine the different methods of farming available to us, such as how do we combine organic farming with conventional farming, the use of herbicides, pesticides, and GM crops in order to best grow our crops, maintain clean water, maintain our livestock, animal health, as well as human health. So it's this combination of things which is the challenge. And of course, we face more human problems. We can face hesitant investors who might be unwilling to take a punt on some of the new technologies that are emerging and some of these solutions. We're going to have to address the problem of of corporations and organizations that are used to competing and try to convince them to collaborate in order to help work together in a bioeconomy and bring the solutions forward. And then we also have to think about how best to structure a communications network and a network of scientific exchange in order to have those new ideas shared across the world. While we should always be working to improve our own scientific and R&D capacity within our own home base, our local cities and our local regions, we can't expect to have all the answers in one place. So as you can tell, these challenges are not just scientific or technological, they're also social, economic, and political. And Innogen, I think, has gone a long way towards addressing these things. As I mentioned in the video, we do look at things in a systems perspective, breaking them up into the component parts, into the different social and economic aspects, figuring out how the system works, and then recommending policy to fix that system. Now, so for example, how would we go about building a bioeconomy? I think the first step would be to break open the bioeconomy into its many niches, the subsectors, and the particular areas of activity that are happening, and try to figure out where they can best be pursued. So for example, we would ask ourselves, where can Scotland contribute to the bioeconomy? Would it be in areas of food and drink production? Would it be in areas of biomedical innovation, such as coming from our universities or places like Roslin-Sells? Or could it be taking the waste from our whiskey industry or Graf and then making that into a scalable source of energy feedstocks in terms of biofuels and bioenergy? The other thing we would want to look at, and we have to look at, is really understanding who the different stakeholders involved are in the bioeconomy, from industry to government to the NGOs, and understand what the power dynamics are between them and how to get them to sit around the table and collaborate rather than conflict and block progress. We, of course, also have to understand what is necessary within an economy in order to facilitate the bioeconomy's growth. So what kind of capital investment, what kind of education, what kind of skills, what kind of infrastructure is necessary to tie all of these things together. And then I think more complicated is the fact that we have to understand how these things evolve. An economic system, a system of innovation, and the bioeconomy is not just going to stay the same all the time, it's going to evolve over time. And what might be a useful policy at one point in time won't be a useful policy perhaps 2, 3, 4 years down the line, 5 years down the line. So we have to understand how things change. And Innogen has gone about doing this and trying to figure it out by creating, at a bird's eye level, some models to better understand innovation systems, to break them apart. And then we also have to understand from the ground level how we also have models which, on the ground level, help businesses create their business, better business models in order to deliver their innovation. And we've been working on methods to help the stakeholders sit around the table and actually facilitating those meetings ourselves in order to come up with good solutions. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Michele. You can see it's not that straightforward doing 20 slides in 20 seconds apiece. You have no control on when they're moving. Anyway, the second speaker is Joyce Tate. I was trying to work out how to describe her. I could spend 5 minutes describing her, but I won't. I thought, actually, because she's giving the second talk, why don't I describe it as the filling? It's probably not organic, knowing Joyce, this filling, but it's probably savoury. It's almost certainly not tough. And Joyce Tate is next on. Thanks.
Innogen's unique interdisciplinary approach brings together an understanding of how innovative value chains are developed and smarter, more adaptive regulatory processes are shaped, along with more effective engagement of the stakeholders that are affected by the new technologies. Innogen has created a widely applicable set of innovative approaches and methods that seek to improve the success rate in delivering innovative products from the life sciences that are both societally acceptable and economically viable. So in the early stages of developing a new technology, it's often really difficult to see what will be used for eventually. If you take lasers, for example, when they were first developed, we thought they might make handy weapons. And now they're in everything from consumer electronics to precision surgery. And following this slide, we have Edinburgh's own Alistair Elphick with his sperm shaker that uses laser optical tweezers to hold a sperm cell in place while you can non-destructively evaluate its quality for in vitro fertilization. So we could have had a negative backlash to this technology based on its military history, but it's now used to meet public needs we didn't even know we had when it was first developed. Things have been different for GM crops. This is Lord Melchett destroying a GM crop. He was arrested, tried, and acquitted. When the judge acquitted him, he ruled that even if he genuinely believed that GM crops are if he genuinely believed that GM crops are dangerous, he was justified in destroying them if he had that genuine belief. And I think what you could justify on that precedent. So environmental groups like Greenpeace and others regularly produce what they call scientific evidence to support their anti-GM stance. And this has made it difficult for most people to know what to believe and what not to believe in the sea of claims and counterclaims that are out there in the media. And then you have other scientists and social scientists who take part in this process, diluting the quality of the evidence that supports decision making. And they use their academic expertise to generate apparently independent analyses that are then used by NGOs to give political support. And there was last summer a crop trial at Rothamsted Rothamsted Research was threatened with destruction by the pressure group Take the Flower Back. This was a wheat that would have been resistant to insect attack, and that in this case the destruction was prevented by police action. So now the anti-GM attention is being shifted to the new technique of synthetic biology, with campaigns by the same NGOs that have been so successful in opposing GM crops in Europe, particularly a group calling themselves the chimpanzees of the future. So can Mother Earth feed the world? This is the big challenge facing us over the next 50 years, predicted by John Beddington, who was the previous chief scientific advisor. And outside Europe, GM crops are a contribution to that. They're the fastest growing agricultural innovation in history. They're now grown on 160 million hectares globally. And of the GM crops in use today, one of the most significant benefits is the reduction in the use of pesticides, particularly in cotton. In the USA, GM cotton has led to a reduction of about 30% in overall insecticide use, and in developing countries it's enabling small farmers to grow cotton, whereas they couldn't before do so because they couldn't afford the pesticides to make it happen. So who produces GM crops? Well, it's entirely big multinational companies, and over 60% of the GM crops in use come from two American companies, DuPont and Monsanto. Europe could have had a major role in this new technology, but the impact of European NGO activities has been to hand this big prize over to the American multinationals. Now, there are only big companies in this area. No small company can afford to develop the technology for the long time and the expensive regulatory process that it would take. So big companies only, no small companies, unless in support of the big ones. So how do we get out of this mess? So this is Archimedes, who predicted that if you gave him a long enough lever, he could move the world. And for GM technologies and synthetic biology, I think we'll need at least two levers. One, to reduce the political influence of the anti-GM advocacy groups, along with a more adaptive approach to governance and regulation. And that's what Innogen tries to do with its methodologies that operate in this area, linking innovators, stakeholders and governance, and looking particularly at the interactions between them. But if you look at what's happening in Europe, a major, potentially sustainable European industry has been hamstrung by pressure groups that have had a disproportionate influence on public opinion and also on European and international regulatory systems. And some of us believe that this is not the best possible outcome. This is Mark Lynas, who was a Greenpeace activist, has destroyed GM crops in the past, and now says that he thinks he was wrong, and he's parted company with Greenpeace, and he won't now be supporting them. He's joined by Greenpeace's ex-president, Patrick Moore, who says he would not now join Greenpeace. But nevertheless, politicians, not just in Europe, but internationally and in a range of other countries, are still heavily influenced by anti-GM propaganda, which has very little justification. So, are the storm clouds rolling away over Europe? And what will 21st century agriculture look like? What ideology will be in charge in the church? Who will own the fields? And what will the cash cows be producing? We think we need a better approach to regulation and governance. And we also think perhaps we can maybe learn a bit from the past. So this is 14th century Siena. The city's governors met in the great hall of the Palazzo Pubblico, overlooked by this mural representing good governance, flanked by peace, fortitude, prudence, magnanimity, temperance and justice. This would be a good place to start in our attempts to master the universe. This is Edoardo Paolozzi's sculpture in the Dean Gallery in Edinburgh, and there's a clear sense of power and control, but if you look carefully, he's not wearing glasses, he's actually blind. So this illustrates that no matter what your perspective, we should keep a sense of humility about our foresighting abilities. Thank you.
Thank you. And now the video, and then our third speaker, Becky Hanlon from Innogen South at the Open University.
Emerging biomedical technologies have the potential to revolutionize healthcare and improve human health. These range from portable hemoglobin meters and ultrasound machines to new water filtration systems. A key barrier for entry for these new emerging technologies is understanding the complexity of the innovation process. This isn't just issues of the product development process, but also issues of access and capacity within the health system. Innogen research into existing biomedical technologies highlights the multiplicity of factors that impact, because we take a novel social science-based approach.
So, while most of the world is making progress to reduce poverty, disease and hunger, Africa is still suffering more than most. Africa has the highest levels of childhood diseases, especially pneumonia, diarrheal disease, as well as diseases such as malaria, TB, and lesser known diseases such as hookworm and Chagas. Africa's fight against HIV/AIDS is perhaps the most well known, with some countries on the continent having 1 in 4 people infected. But it's not a totally negative story. Slow but steady progress is being made. And one of the reasons for this is the level of innovation taking place. New drugs, vaccines, and diagnostic tools are increasingly being developed, such as being put in place in hospitals such as this one. In fact, the hospitals in this picture in Kilifi, in the coast of Kenya, is home to one of the world's leading malaria research centres. It has done pioneering work on malaria drugs, as well as on issues as how to improve the diagnosis of malaria and to improve hospital care to the most severely infected. One of the reasons that this is possible is because of the emphasis placed on local capacity building to research and study disease. Innogen research has shown that building up human research in one research centre can lead to the creation of new research programs and new research opportunities and feed the establishment of new research centres. Our work on HIV vaccine research in Kenya highlights how research centres that conduct clinical trials on potential vaccines, even when trials were not successful, create a pool of talent that has since gone on to work in clinical trials for other diseases and vaccines in different research centres in the country and in the region. But none of this is, but Africa isn't just conducting clinical research. It's also increasing its manufacturing base. This is a picture taken by a colleague of mine of drug manufacturing for HIV/AIDS in a factory in Zimbabwe. This factory is developing these drugs so that the country does not have to simply rely on expensive imported drugs. This is important capability for the long-term success of reducing disease and improving the economies of African countries. Innogen research has shown that it's essential for African governments to create an enabling environment to allow science, technology and innovation for development to thrive. This is necessary to reduce the health inequalities in the world. This is my daughter in a UK hospital being treated for jaundice when she's just a day old. In many countries in the world, this type of expensive equipment that's required to produce the blue light to treat jaundice is not available. But some countries are developing new and cheaper solutions, such as this one, which has been developed by a Uruguayan scientist and is now being marketed by that scientist for export around the world. And it uses lots of tiny blue LED lights in order to produce the light that's required to treat jaundice. In fact, the process of reverse engineering, where technologies pioneered into the developing world are taken up by countries such as the UK, is happening and increasing all the time. Perhaps the best well known is the Tata Nano car from India, but in the healthcare field, it's General Electric's handheld ultrasound machine. One of the key elements to this success is building an enabling environment, which requires a changing mindset by policymakers. Innogen spends lots of time working with policymakers, such as at this workshop in Kenya, in Nairobi to understand what innovation is and how best to promote it. Considering the enabling environment isn't rocket science, however. In fact, you'd think it was pretty obvious, but often there are many obstacles that stop policymakers from being able to think broadly about what is needed to maximise the health and welfare of their country's citizens. These include limited budgets for health. Many governments in Africa have health budgets that equate to less than £10 per person. It also includes other more pressing problems such as war and conflict, or other competing policy areas such as natural resources and exploration and mining for oil, gas or gold. But some countries are making progress. Science and technology and innovation for example, is centre stage in Kenya's Vision 2030 document, which is the nationwide strategy for the country's economic and social development over the coming years. Rwanda is making progress with its health budget per capita, which is now nearly double that of many of its neighbours. Ethiopia and Malawi have benefited from working with international partners to train their healthcare workers, particularly at the community level, including in Malawi's case, with partnership with the Scottish Government. In addition, Africa is a hub for innovative and entrepreneurial talent. Africa was the birthplace of mobile money transfer, and some would argue crowdsourcing software, and even three-wheel baby strollers, if you're to believe the story I heard just recently. And hundreds of people are developing new ideas every day. The success of mobile phones in Africa has led to mobile phones being used in healthcare as well, to try and increase the adherence to drug treatment, for example. And this is another example of a system that is now being used in the UK and the US and Europe to try and treat illness and, for example, public health activities such as smoking cessation. What is needed now is sustained effort by policymakers, communities and businesses, supported by academics, to ensure that Africa can build up its manufacturing base in a way that supports the health and welfare of its citizens to continue to improve access to affordable healthcare. A key element that's necessary to ensure that this sustained change happens is through continued use of social and economic research and policy advice, such as that provided by Innogen.
Thanks so much for that. Very fast, 60, 20 seconds. Quite a lot though. And I hope one thing that you got from that is that innovation doesn't have to be the same thing. It doesn't have to be a kind of grey thing. Sometimes it's seen as a bit kind of boring, and it's so much more exciting to do other things than to try and innovate. But I hope you got a sense that there are different things under the rubric innovation. And Innogen has tried really hard not just to study the obvious things. We study the obvious things, the really high-tech things, but we also study a whole set of things where differences can be made relatively easily. So thanks very much.
Thanks, Dave. Yes, that's it for us from the presentation standpoint. I hope you enjoyed the videos and the 20 by 20 presentations. I agreed to host this event with my colleague Dave because I was too afraid of trying to actually keep the time doing 20 by 20. It's not as easy as it looks. So thank you, Becky, Joyce, and Kaylee for doing such an amazing job. And again, we'd like to also thank the ESRC for having sponsored the Festival of Social Science, because it's an important way for us to communicate the work that we do in non-conventional formats like this one and interact with people who are interested in the kinds of topics that we work in. So thank you, and let's have a drink. Good one, Anne.